Hi, this is Gary Pageau, and I'd like to announce Photo Imaging Connect at D-Scoop, March 7th and 8th, 2022 in Denver, Colorado. Photo Imaging Connect will feature 4 45-minute sessions focusing on the photo imaging market. For more information and to use your discount code, go to photoimagingconnect.com. That's photoimagingconnect.com. Hope to see you there.
Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by MediaClip, Photo Finale, and Advertech Printing. Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by the president of Gooten, Maddy Alcala, who's coming to us from Denver, Colorado, although the company is based in New York City. Hi, Maddy. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Gary. Thank you. How are you?
Good. So first, tell us a little bit about Gooten. It's a relatively new company in the space, founded in 2015.
Yes. So Gooten is a technology company, and we specialize in partnering with e-commerce businesses primarily who are looking for a fulfillment partner in the on-demand space. So at the very simple essence of the company, we connect supply and demand. So the demand side is orders that e-commerce businesses fit to us, and the supply side is the manufacturing network of photo printers, textile printers, apparel decorators across the world that we partner with to get those orders printed, shipped, and fulfilled out to customers.
When did you start with the company? Were you there from the beginning?
I wasn't there from the beginning. Gooten actually has an interesting history. The company was actually originally started in terms of the technology and the first piece of code written back in 2012.
Okay.
And the origin story came from our original founder, who had actually worked in a t-shirt shop during the summers outside of Philadelphia as a college student. That was his summer job, was pulling t-shirts off presses, screen printing, everything there. And he's an engineer, and he realized just how difficult it was for that local printer to get orders into their system. And it was a pretty labor-intensive process. So
Sure.
He had this idea to start a technology company really to facilitate order routing and order fulfillment, primarily in the on-demand world, which was still pretty nascent at the time. So he partnered up with the original co-founder of the business, and they actually started a company called Print.io. So people who've been around for a while in the photo space might remember Print.io. I think we were called Makeable for a little bit. And unfortunately for the founders, they ran into a bunch of trademark issues with names, and it was kind of a rocky start to the business. So we talk about the founding of Gooten in 2015. That's when we rebranded. And really, it was a whole new leadership team, starting with our CEO, Brian, that came in at the time. So Gooten, as it is today, really is about 7 years old. But some of our code and some of the original partnerships we have in the space go back even longer, which is kind of fun.
So where does the name Gooten come from?
So I will tell you the public story, and I'll tell you the real story behind the name. The public story, and I think it's a nice one, is that, really, we were inspired by Johannes Gutenberg, who, of course, is credited with the printing press and really democratizing access to printing. And so Gooten is a play on that name in terms of democratizing access to high quality on-demand fulfillment for e-commerce businesses. The real name, as our CEO will tell you, came from the fact that it was a made-up word that we could get with the trademark, and the domain was relatively cheap.
Exactly. And no one else had it close.
So both sides work, right?
When I first came across the name, I kind of thought, that sounds vaguely European. Are they like from the Netherlands or something?
We do get Guten Tag jokes, Guten Day jokes. They're fun, right?
You recently have become the president of the company. When did you join the company, and in what role was that? And what's your background? Why did they say Maddy's the person we need to have on our team?
I joined the company in 2017, so about 2 years after the current CEO stepped in. And my original role in the company was on our partner success team. So at the time, we had a sales team, a pretty traditional one, smiling and dialing, looking for big logos, frankly, and customers to bring in. But we had a very healthy flow of e-commerce businesses and merchants signing up for us. And no one was really doing anything with those customers. So My original role was to figure out what those customers wanted from us, who they were, what they liked about us, what they didn't like about us, and then also support the CEO on special projects. So
Mm-hmm.
my background is actually in corporate strategy and development, more on the finance side.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to Gooten, I was at BlackRock, big asset manager in New York City, and I supported the global executive team on strategic projects development, really looking at 3 to 5 year business planning across the company
Right.
to how to grow. So bit of a weird transition to a 20-person e-commerce startup in the middle of Manhattan, but I think
Right.
the background in numbers and finance and really strategic
Mhm.
business planning has helped me quite a bit.
Tell me about a little bit about the company side of it. I mean, do you do your own production? Is that sourced to other people? How is it managed? Because you said it's 20 people. You can't run a printing operation with 20 people. So you must have some partnerships there.
Yeah, so it was about 20 people when I joined in 2017. We're at about 130 people now. So we've grown quite a bit. And as I originally said, we're a technology company. So we actually don't do any of our own production. Our model is to partner with decorators or printers in the space. And then we handle all of the order routing, product creation, integrations with Shopify, all of the kind of merchant enablement. And really where we're investing and where we're looking to grow is very much on that order routing, order processing technology piece.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we do today is on demand. It's all made to order or personalized, a lot of it. But as we grow and start to provide solutions to other parts of the market, I think we'll start getting into other types of production. So apparel is the one that most people are familiar with, where you have DTG printing, where goods are decorated on demand. The more traditional way or the analog way of decorating them is with screen printing. So we're starting to dip our toe into that market in terms of processing more bulk style orders as well, in terms of just.
Yeah, I think one of the things that traditional photo space, the direct-to-garment printing has become sort of an interesting play, because it's just another substrate, really, if you think about it. And I think those worlds are going to be coming together pretty quickly. There's really no reason why, if you can put a photo on a mug, you can't put a photo on a shirt or something else for whatever reason. So it sounds to me like you're running up. There's a lot of players in that market. It's super competitive from what I can see. And you've recently announced you've raised $15 million in capital. What is the objective of that capital raise?
Yeah, so we're super excited about the capital raise because it came from a combination of existing investors and new investors. And so it's always great to get new interest in your business, of course, but also affirmed that people who've already given you money want to give you some more. And really that capital is going to building out our engineering team. So we've got a big roadmap of items that we've heard from our merchant partners and manufacturers that we want to build. And then also growing some of our support and sales functions as well. So we grew tremendously in 2020, I think, as most people in this space did.
Right.
And last year, I think, was a really good year for us in terms of understanding where we still had gaps and what we needed to do next. And so the capital raise was a great tool for us to bring in some additional money to say, all right, we're going to go invest and fill those gaps. We have our small e-commerce businesses, so think about sellers who are on Shopify or Etsy. And we love those partners. That's really where our roots are from and how we've grown up in the space. But we've had quite a bit of traction with, bigger retailers, enterprise-sized clients, and obviously they have a lot more rigorous demands. And so a lot of the capital is going to projects that will support those larger enterprise deals that we've brought in.
So you kind of took advantage of anybody can have a Shopify store, Etsy ecosystem, and now you're going to be kind of going after the larger volume type business where you probably need a little more infrastructure, more sales support, all that kind of stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. What is the breakdown just offhand in terms of your product mix? How much of it is just like, just the garment stuff versus the other stuff? I'm just curious, where that's breaking out in terms of where your growth potential can be, because people can wear so many shirts.
Yeah, it's really about a third right now, split across apparel, second category being home decor and textiles, and the third category being wall art and photo. So on the apparel side, that's obviously t-shirts, hoodies, a lot of garments, textiles, think blankets, all the way to curtains and duvet covers, right? And then wall art, of course, canvas, frame prints, a lot of those classic products. And then, the remaining 10 to 15% is a lot of hard goods, drinkware, mugs, or tech accessories.
Tech accessories. Tell me a little bit about that, because that used to be a hot topic about 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, everyone needs a phone cover and everyone wants their picture on it. Then that kind of died.
Yeah.
Where do you see as the opportunity there? Because I frankly don't see one.
We see it, well, to be blunt, really in two areas. One of it is a lead gen mechanism for us, right? Having those products in our catalog helps us to attract new businesses because people still look for that stuff. But we joke about a lot internally is we have about 150 products in our catalog that we offer. The top 10 of those make up 80% of our volumes.
Right.
But the other 140, people come to us and say, I saw you had ottomans. Isn't that amazing? And then they sell t-shirts, right?
Right.
And they never sell one ottoman. So
Right.
a lot of it is lead generation. And then the other piece is, upsell items that we do have merchants, to take that phone case example, that their primary business is posters, but they'll have phone cases on their site, and that might help them drive some, increased cart value for purchases there. So having some of those smaller accessory items, particularly around gifting periods, we'll see some spikes in sales, but by no means is it a massive volume mover for us.
It's sort of the classic long tail sort of
exactly
approach, which you're right. I mean, if you're a consumer and you go to a site, it does help to see a full array of offerings. And because they're being printed on demand, it really doesn't kill you to have coffee mugs and travel mugs and ottomans and all that stuff there, because it's not like it's taking actual physical inventory space. So you may as well have them on there. And if you do sell one, it's kind of a bonus.
Exactly.
So where do you see your customers coming from? Are they mostly North America, or do you have you're a global company, correct?
We're a global company. So we have teammates in the US, Canada, Colombia, Serbia, Ukraine, Belarus, and I think I'm probably missing one. So all over North America, a little in South America and Europe. The majority of our merchants that we work with are US based in terms of, or not, in the sense that the majority of their customers are US based. So that's still where the primary, of our order volumes get shipped and delivered to. But we've done quite a bit of work in the past year, and it's a big initiative for this year to expand a lot more into Western Europe, Canada, Australia, English-speaking countries where we're not ready to translate our website into Chinese yet. But to answer your question, mostly US, but I mean, it's e-commerce, so it's global in its nature.
Yeah, that's mostly my audience is English-speaking folks, although I do have a few over, down in the place they have to hit the translate key. So, So holiday season 2021, I'm getting mixed messages from people about how it went. I mean, it seemed to be great from a standpoint of interest and orders, but a challenge in terms of delivery and availability of product because of supply chain issues and things like that. As someone who doesn't control their production per se, you don't have your own production. So how do you manage those kind of things when you may have a partner who's like, we don't have any structure bars, we can't make canvas right now? Yeah,
so we both have a ton of benefit from our business model and also more risk, right? Because we don't have that control. So holiday season for us, actually 2021, I will cautiously say, because we're still getting data on it, we think was our smoothest holiday season ever in terms of kind of minimal disruptions. We track obviously percentage of orders that were submitted that actually ended up getting produced and shipped, and that was quite high. And a lot of the reason for that is that part of our model is to have redundancy in our manufacturing network. And so to take your Canvas example, we work with the major players in the space that probably most people listening have heard of, but we don't just work with one of them. And so if there's a problem at one facility or with one particular company, we can reroute order volume fairly easily across our network. And the majority of merchants who work with us, that's a big selling point for them, because why companies work with Gooten instead of going direct to manufacturers a lot of times, not just because of the technology and the service, but it's because they don't want to be single sourced. And in the case of a stock out or a disruption because of a snowstorm, we have a lot of flexibility there. So we definitely felt the impact of labor shortages, supply chain issues, that it's impossible not to feel the impact of those in this industry at this point. But I think it was muted compared to what, for example, if we had our own printing equipment and facility, I'm sure we would have had our own issues. But the fact that we can spread volumes around in the network and be dynamic in terms of how we're sharing our work definitely helps.
So what does it take to become a partner? Because some of our listeners, are production facilities and may be interested in partnering with Gooten. What is that process like? What are your requirements to become a partner? I mean, clearly you have to be able to meet some sort of requirements of volume or service production or deliverability or things like that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's probably a more detailed one than we'll be able to get into today, but I'll try to shed some light on it. We've got all day. We have a team dedicated to it. It's actually run by a man named Craig. So So he's the eyes, the brains around that operation. But really, it comes down to a couple things for us. So we set a roadmap annually in terms of where we, who we want to add and why. And that's not necessarily picking a logo out. It's saying these are the problems for the business that we're trying to solve. Either we want to get into this new category of products, or we want to expand into a new geography, or sometimes, we have this partner that we're working with now, and we need a backup, or we want to replace them, right? Because it's not going where we need to go. So
Stuff
from
happens.
that list, right, we typically start going out to the market and meeting with different partners. A lot of our focus, as I said, right now is on international. So Canada, UK, mainland Europe is where a lot of our sourcing and integration efforts are going. But within the domestic market, it comes down to quality. That's the first thing we look for, of quality. And obviously within the on-demand world, there's a great degree of variability, but we want to work with like-minded partners who also prioritize quality. We'd rather work with a facility that takes the time to get the orders done correctly than necessarily is the one that says, I'm going to be the best in terms of speed or the best in terms of price. We'd rather be the best in terms of quality. So we typically send people out, they walk the manufacturing floors, they get to know the owners and the people who run the facility, talk a lot about the quality piece to start. Beyond that, it's actually geography within the US as well. Can we supplement a gap in our network in terms of regional coverage? And then can we, what kind of value does this new manufacturer bring us that we don't have in our network today? Is it they can do special products that we can't get elsewhere, or they can do things differently from a packaging and finishing standpoint, right? Especially as we're working with a lot of bigger brands, they've got more robust fulfillment requirements of I need stuff in the bag and I need special packaging, or the kind of VAS services, as people call them. So looking at kind of supplementing the network there. But we work right now with about 30 manufacturing partners globally.
How many?
30.
30, okay.
And among them about 70 production locations. So the US is the biggest there. We're pretty well saturated. And if we haven't worked with a manufacturer, we typically know them for the most part. So we go to a lot of the industry events as well. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer and probably a non-answer in some ways to your question. But
no, it's interesting because I think it's we've seen a lot of consolidation over the last couple of years in the industry, and it's primarily around regional concerns, right? I need somebody in the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, so I buy somebody in the East Coast, kind of thing. But it sounds to me like you're more concerned about product mix and quality more so than delivery cycles. I mean, clearly they got to be able to deliver. I'm saying that, but that's not your primary concern. Is we got to have it there next day, necessarily.
It's a factor for sure, but if we take the three-legged stool of manufacturing, of quality, price, and speed, we tend to index around quality first, and then it's a trade-off on price and speed for us. And so we would almost always rather work with a facility that is really the best in terms of what they can deliver in their industry, even if we have to sacrifice a bit on the delivery speed component and on the production speed component. Because our view and what we've heard from our merchant manufacturing partners on the small business side, even in the large enterprise space, is that this is very personal for them, right? Because it's a representation of their brand. And it's a finished product that, with the way that on demand, I think, is growing as a supply chain solution, and not to at all denigrate the kind of photo gift component of that, because getting a picture of your family on your blanket and your family's messed up, nobody wants that for Christmas, right? But we're fulfilling for major tours in the music space, we're fulfilling for major retailers, we're fulfilling for online streamers and gamers, and even high-end retail brands that frankly a lot of times don't want to say that they're producing on demand because there's still a bit of a stigma around it. And so that brand representation and the quality side for us is super important. And even the brands that we work with, we say, look, they're willing to sacrifice typically, a day or two of delivery speed if it means that the quality of that finished product is going to be that much higher and more consistent, right? Because it's not just being able to do one of them, it's being able to do thousands of them at a consistent level.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because you have sort of what's that called? The corporate incentive market, right? Where it's like branded items that companies give out for their things, and that's sort of always kind of been there in the sense that, pens and knickknacks and things, but now you can customize those things even further. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there where, maybe you have an employee award, for example, they're getting their crystal award for 5 years with the company or 10 years with the company. And before, that would just be a flat piece of lucite with some laser etching on it. Now you can put their actual image on it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's a couple of technology companies again in this space. I imagine you're familiar with a couple of them, but a couple like Alice and Postal and Snappy and some of those corporate gifting or the platforms tied to sales engagement. They'll integrate with your CRM and they support sales teams to send out custom gifts. We're actually working with a good number of them, or have spoken to a good number of them about how we can bring even more personalization into that, corporate gifting or promotional products market, if you will.
Right.
So it's definitely a segment that we focus on too, because I'm with you. I think there's a ton of opportunity there to shake things up and frankly probably bring some of those products forward in terms of what the customer or the employee's happy to be receiving.
Yeah, I mean, hooray, I've got a great pen,
Right.
or something.
Yes, exactly.
Going forward, you mentioned before that there may be a stigma to print on demand, and some people, they may not want to admit they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But, the reality is the bar in terms of quality and appearance of product and the type of product has really been raised over the last few years, where it's almost indistinguishable.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking maybe the future of a Gap or other retailers, they print their stuff in the store so they have it, so they can manage inventory right there. But who knows? But do you see that disappearing over time, that stigma is kind of gonna disappear? Because I do think from a technology standpoint, you're not sacrificing quality by doing print on demand.
I completely agree. And I think it is going to continue to disappear over time. And to your point around major retail, I don't know if you saw the announcement, but last year, Delta Apparel and Hot Topic actually partnered to put a Cornette machine in the back of a Hot Topic store to do exactly that.
I didn't know that. That makes so much sense, though.
Which makes so much sense, right? There's obviously machine upkeep and labor and stock considerations, right? Everything that comes into actually storing a $500,000 piece of equipment and getting T-shirts into it. But it was really interesting to see, because I think that we'll start to see a lot more of that hyper localization of production, and that at the same time. But they're kind of interesting themes though, because it's like we were talking about with this trade-off between delivery speed and quality. I've walked the floors of some of the biggest on-demand decorators and operations in the U.S. I'm sure you have too, right? Super impressive of what these manufacturers can accomplish and decorators can accomplish. But it requires a lot of space and skill and trained labor and raw materials. And so on one hand, you could totally see the argument for consolidation, right? Like I'd rather work with 2 to 3 really, really good facilities across the U.S. that've got West Coast, Central America, and East Coast than 20 smaller facilities, because how are you going to control quality, right? It just becomes so much harder the more dispersed that you have the production equipment.
Exactly.
But at the same time, right, you think about it and you're like, well, you could put a machine in the back of a Kohl's, right? And print this stuff on demand. And so I'm curious to see kind of where we shake out between that balance of that hyper localization, but also where I think the industry is going personally is converging a lot more around that quality product. And that particularly in the photo and wall art space, I think that space is the furthest ahead, and that the type of finished framed print that you can get truly is at those, especially with some of the professional photo labs, is incredible, right? Hundreds of dollars of retail value, if not more, in terms of what they can deliver to customers. I think the apparel space is really starting to catch up, but there's more work to be done. And then you take hard goods and textiles, and it's probably somewhere in between. But we've done our own research. We've piggybacked on some other research in the space, and we think that within the next really 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, that we're going to start to see the adoption of digital production skyrocket, and that maybe if 5% of goods today are made printed on demand, we think the industry, we could wave a magic wand, should really be at 30 to 35%, and that we're going to start accelerating rapidly toward that, particularly with everything else that's going on in the supply chain.
I do think that's a great point, because in the traditional photo industry, it went from analog, where you'd ship your film to a central wholesale lab, and then they shipped the consumers back pictures, and then that equipment started to miniaturize and became local retailer who did that. And then when that went digital, it became online wholesale and then local retail, and they're doing it. And I think in some ways that process is just being repeated again, because businesses go in cycles.
Exactly. I think so too. And it's, we use the photo example all the time. And we think that other parts of the on-demand space are in that transition process in terms of where they're moving. And really, it's a lot of, not to get too high in the sky, right? But you said it, I think, at the beginning, it's a crazy industry to work in. It definitely is, but it's a pretty cool one, I think. And we think so at Gooten, because it's really defining the future of how goods are made.
Right.
And I think that, again, to go back to the print on demand, is there a stigma around it? Sure, probably, because I think some people say, well, the old way is better, depending on the product category. I'm always going to screen print my t-shirt. Disagree, right? And we can show you the alternative to that. But people are starting to get more educated, I think, and see that the quality and the product and the speed and the price is really getting to a point where it's very commercial for a lot of businesses. But beyond that, there's so much possibility in this market that we get really excited about, from the standpoint of environmental sustainability and producing something when you need it. And the real-time nature of content. We've got TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and that's where people are a lot of times getting their news and finding out what's trendy. And there's no longer 4 seasons of fashion. There's 365 days of who knows what's going to be viral and trending on that day. And so I think that virality of content, the personalization, the improving quality, and frankly, the shorter supply chains are things that we get excited when we look at this space and say, there's so much room to grow here. And there's so many room for a lot of companies to be winners. To your comment as well about this is a competitive market. It absolutely is. But we think it's a huge market, and that there's, to get a small slice of it is still, a lot of money to be made and a lot of businesses to be made successful.
If you're in the world of looking at the traditional market, you may kind of be in that, oh my gosh, it's competitive and where's the growth and everything. But then when you look around, it's like every single podcaster, every single YouTuber, every single Twitch person, Instagram influencer, they've got a merch store. Yep. Who's printing that stuff? Guess what? Right? Exactly.
They've got a merch store, and if they don't, they should. And in the same way, right, that it's on this, the entrepreneur side, it's so easy now to start a website, and Shopify and the platform, BigCommerce and platforms like that. It takes you 15 minutes.
Wait, I need to put up a merch store. Wait a second. Right. What am I doing?
You should.
Here?
There should be a Dead Pixels merch store. What are you doing here? You've got all the
I'm going to have your guy Craig call me. We're going to set that up.
Yes, absolutely. We'll help you with it. We've got a really easy Shopify integration if you use Shopify. There you go. Yes. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity. So it's not how big is the market today, it's how big will it be? And
well, I do think it kind of builds on this trend that we're just seeing culturally, that people are expecting more things to be customized for them, whether it's, healthcare or personal things they buy or everything else. There's just such an overwhelming desire for that. If I had a choice between a sweatshirt that has a generic design on it or something I designed, which one would I buy? Probably, as an everyday user, probably the one I design, especially since there's probably not a big price differential. That's the other thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that there's this spectrum of personalization too, right? That there is obviously the non-personalized content. If I'm a t-shirt shop owner and I draw up this cool graphic and sell it, right? Maybe I did a really good job and I drew a cool graphic and a bunch of people want it. And then there's the complete opposite end of that spectrum, which is, here's a blank t-shirt, put whatever you want on it, right?
Right.
But what we're seeing a lot of is that middle space of, kind of that curated personalization where the customer doesn't have full freedom to put whatever they want on the t-shirt or on the coffee mug, but they can add their name or they can, make it about them and their family. And it's, I think that those types of products and those types of designs, I mean, we look at our data and analytics, a lot of what we do. And I've always joked, I'm sure you've seen these. Do you have pets? Right?
Of course. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a cat. I'll look at stuff on Instagram and get targeted by the, put your dog's portrait, make them look like a medieval king on a canvas, right? We fulfill for almost all of those businesses. And it's insane because it connects to someone. It's their animal, but they didn't design the king outfit, right? So it's that kind of curated personalization in the middle there that I think really resonates.
You've hit on a great point, because that's something that I think a lot of consumers feel they're not creative, right? And so to start from ground zero and create a design where maybe they have to think, oh, wow, wouldn't my cat look great as the King of England? Right. And then they have to go find the image, and then they have to find the image of the cat that works, and then they got to put it together. That's far too difficult. But if someone could take them 80% of the way there, get them, the starting line isn't zero. The starting line is we give you a template and you just pop in the picture, then they feel they've invested into it and they're getting a personalized product and everyone wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about myself. I work in this industry, but I am by no means a designer. And when I'm shopping online, I'm a little lazy. I'm on my couch. And so I want it to be easy, but I also want it to be personalized to me. And so I think you're totally right that middle spectrum there of, avoiding the paradox of choice, because it's overwhelming to look at a product and design it and figure out what to put everywhere. But if the business who's selling that product can take away some of those choice elements, but still make it feel personal to the end customer and give something that they can connect with, I think that's where we're seeing a lot of people win in this space.
Yeah, because like, for example, one of the holy grails in the photo side of the business was about 10, 15 years ago was the photo book. The idea that people really want to take their digital pictures and put them in a book and go to town, and that'll be the future. And it kind of petered out. I mean, it's growing, but it didn't back then. That was like, oh my gosh, that's the holy grail. Well, the reality is most people don't know how to design books. They needed help. They needed templates, and they needed AI to guide them, and autofill and auto enhancement and all these things, these tools that are needed to help the customer along to get what they really want. And so I think that's something that as people are designing products and systems have to remember. Part of the product that you're offering is to do 80% of the work for the consumer.
Right. And that's where your brand comes in as well. And you can make it, I think from the business standpoint, you can carve out a niche and really infuse something special there. And, I talk to e-commerce businesses a lot, as does my team. And that's what the majority of them want to be focused on. They want to be focused on creating their niche and developing that special connection with their customer and marketing and thinking about those problems. And they don't want to be focused on, well, how do I get this thing printed and fulfilled? And I think that's where, we're able to come in and really take that piece off their plate, manage the manufacturing network on their behalf. We do so much work in terms of demand planning and forecasting and, dealing with the day-to-day issues that come up as part of a, on-demand fulfillment business that, mugs are out of stock, yellow accent mugs are out of stock in Iowa or wherever, right? Well, we're going to pick up all these orders and reroute them and upgrade shipping and deal with all of this. And, Gooten a lot of times will even purchase inventory on behalf of our merchant to round it all back around, right? It's an interesting world to be in because there's so many little components of it. There's that, front-end personalization technology piece. There's manufacturing, there's order routing, there's integrations with the e-commerce businesses, there's marketplaces. Like, I think that, we're big partnership people and we like to approach a space of we're going to be really good at this one thing and then try to work with others who are specialists in their areas as well.
Well, and it sounds like you got the resources to build your team. So that's great.
Yes, we do. We have the resources to grow, which is exciting, and maybe we'll bring in more. Who knows?
Well, thank you, Maddie, for your time today. And best wishes for a great 2022. Hopefully we'll see you at some of those industry events you mentioned, and have a great 2022.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Really excited to be here. It was good chatting with you.
Hello, and right now we're joined by Hans Hartman of Suite 48A, who runs with his partner, Alexi Girard, the Visual1st conference. And Hans is here to talk to us right now about the Metaverse, which has been in the news. Hans, what is the Metaverse and why should we care?
That's an incredibly difficult question. The point is that there's a lot of different opinions about what the Metaverse is, but to me, it is at least an immersive kind of experience, a digital experience where you feel you're in a different area where you can connect, you can play games, you can even do business there, but it's a digital immersive space. Now, some people go pretty far in that to say, hey, it requires even headsets, and others say, hey, it's just in a browser. Instead of being in a completely 2D environment, you're in a 3D environment. You're in that environment. It's not that much different from a Zoom call, which is like a 2D video kind of experience, but it's a step up towards feeling you are really connected with the people that you are connecting with. So it's a way of connecting.
That doesn't sound radically different than Second Life 15 years ago or whenever that was. So why now? What, other than the fact some pretty big names have endorsed the idea and even renamed their companies to reflect the Metaverse? Is it the technology? What is it?
To be frank, I mean, Facebook, who is then renamed as Meta, they did an incredibly big push and brought together a lot of other vendors who have been doing, initiatives in the AR and in particular in the VR world also. But they're definitely not the only ones. You see Microsoft, you see Google, Snapchat has done a lot of things on the AR side of things. They don't call them Metaverse, but there are a lot of initiatives that were already more towards people digitally connecting in different ways. And of course, we all know during the COVID era, we all got more used to doing things digitally, including, in our own case with our conference, instead of meeting in person. Mm-hmm. We enable people through a video stream to connect that way and even do some networking that way. So you see, people gotten a lot more used to digitally connecting. That's number one. And number two, Facebook, for whatever reason, they already had all kind of 3D initiatives. They really made a big push because they wanted to show more what they are all about in going forward in long term.
So, but the business case for the metaverse, using that as a generic term, not specifically Facebook's iteration of it, hasn't really made a lot of headway because there's hardware involved, because there's pretty steep hardware requirements on a PC or something like that. Now, I think that's going away to some extent. People are becoming more comfortable with headwear of some sort. But I'm other than advertising and selling subscriptions, what is the business case?
Well, that's also a very difficult question. But it's almost, a nonsensical, and I don't mean that in a negative sense there, but it's almost a nonsensical question, because what's the business case of the internet, right? The internet also enables people to check out things, view things, connect things, subscribe to things, buy things, etc. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff will happen in some version in a metaverse also, but you feel more there. There are more benefits. It goes a step further towards really, understanding what's going on there. You can collaborate better. You can check out artwork better. You can play games better that way than just a 2D kind of environment as we currently have at the internet. So there are a lot of different use cases. And of course, where you and I are coming from is how does that then matter to folks who are already, developing solutions for photos and videos? It is an obvious. That's really why we said, hey, we need to put on an event that we can brainstorm about that. But I think the key thing, whatever way you define the metaverse and whatever way you look at what's happening there, the basic thing about the metaverse, it's all about visuals. It's all about photo and video. So if you are in a business that creates video or enables users to create better photos and videos, that metaverse is going to matter in some fashion, to be determined how, but it definitely is going to be very important for your business. Mm-hmm. Even if you are in a business of selling printed versions of photos, it's also going to matter. If you are a camera vendor and you capture photos and visuals, it's, the metaverse is all about visuals. And in all the hype and all the noise and the 3D game headsets, people tend to forget it is all about photos and videos, and whether it's 2D or 3D, that's to be determined, and it's going to be both. But anyways, that's why it really matters for our industry in some fashion, and it will take a long time before we all realize how it will matter and how we can chime in. But we wanted to have an early discussion now that there is so much attention and there's so much money, investment money flowing into this whole metaverse development. This is the time to really think through how that's going to impact your business.
So in terms of timing, you've got an event coming up in mid-March that will probably serve as an entree for a lot of people among our listenership to learn more about the metaverse. Can you share more about your Spotlight event on March 15th?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's, I think most of your audience know we have Visual1st, which is an annual conference typically held in October, and that's a longer conference. It's 2 days or even 3 days last year. Traditionally, that has been held in person. The last 2 years, we've done it virtually, but it's a longer event. So the idea of Spotlight events is to do, zoom in on a single topic, make it very short, hour and a half, and have it streamed. So everybody from anywhere in the world can attend there.
Are headsets required?
No.
Okay, good. Okay.
Internet connectivity, yes. Travel, no. But there's actually the interesting thing with the streaming service that we used last year, and you have also used in your event, there is a very interesting one, because it's sort of like Zoom, but then there are elements that makes you feel, hey, you know what, it's a little bit more immersive than a straightforward Zoom event. For instance, there's sort of a networking possibility. So if your video avatar has sort of like a live feed of you in a circle, if that is close to somebody else, you guys, the two people can hear each other very well. If you're farther removed in the room, that sound level will go down, and ultimately, if somebody's on the other side of the room, you cannot hear them, they cannot hear you, which is a great, it's an initial baby step towards feeling that digital experience is more like real life, and it's more immersive than a straightforward Zoom call. And the other thing, it's such a probably easy to create technical feature, but I think it is so, you feel so much more like it is in an in-person conference, is the idea that you can, at the bottom there is a button that you can click an emoji. And it could be a clapping hand or a thumbs up kind of thing. So what we've seen during our conference is, somebody really made a very smart remark during a session or a panel. You got all these emoticons flying up in the air. Yeah. And the smarter comment was made during the conference, the more of that. It's like a virtual applause. And it really felt, there is some interaction going on between the audience and
we'll continue to use that platform, Share Me Chat, for the time being. But going forward on the program itself, you have a very compressed education schedule but it's kind of action-packed with some high-powered people. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm very, very pleased with the speaker lineup. So we have a fireside chat presenter, and that's Eric Chang. He's head of immersive at Meta, formerly Facebook. He spoke, everybody, I encourage them to read his bio. It's absolutely fabulous, his background. He's a very talented photographer. He is sort of Mr. Underwater photographer in the US, has a great following there. He had a website, That Pixels, that's very well known, so underwater photographer. Then he was very instrumental in putting DJI on the map with drone photography. So it was with DJI, spoke also at our Visual1st conference. And then now he has been very instrumental with Facebook or Meta for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even, in really helping Meta to get their heads around 3D, sharing 3D information and content. So he is our fireside chat presenter. He will also participate in the panel, because in the panel, where I can go through the other speakers, but basically there we want to address the question. So what's in the metaverse for me as an industry player in the photo and video industry, and what could the metaverse actually how could it leverage what we have? So there we will have a discussion about the quote unquote traditional photo and video industry and the metaverse. So quickly through it, we also have Alex Khoury from Adobe. So he's in the division that is really all about 3D tools, because 3D is very, very important for the metaverse. So we will talk about their tool and their vision of how to connect the Adobe 3D applications to the more traditional 2D, like Illustrator and Photoshop kind of world. So he's doing initiatives also within Adobe. Another fabulous speaker is Justin Melillo from Mona Gallery. So they actually develop metaverse spaces. And he was with Magic Leap in the past and also with DreamWorks Animation. So he's really a movie creation kind of creative professional, and so they have a solution for how to create metaverses. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth speaker in the panel is Kirby Winfield. He is a venture capitalist for a really early stage company. So he will look at that more from a business perspective. So what's real? How can you eventually make money? And why would I invest in these kind of things? On top of that, I don't want to go through the entire program, but we also have 4 show and tell presenters who come from very distinctly different areas, and they will demo their solutions online as well.
Talk a little bit about when it is, what time it is during the day, and how do you get more information and possibly sign up to attend?
So it's March 15th. It's between 8 a.m. and 9:30 Pacific time. So everybody can translate it into their own time zone there. And there's more information on visual1st.biz/metaverse. So that's where we have the program, and that's where you can buy tickets. Tickets are very inexpensive because we really want everybody to sort of try this out and participate.
Well, thank you, Hans, for your time and for sharing, and look forward to seeing you virtually on March 15th.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.